You're watching HCAM TV.
Hello, Hopkinton, and welcome to our Wednesday night edition of the Hopkinton Hangout Hour. I'm your host for this evening, Matt Clark. Now, I'm sure that you've all noticed by now, but just in case you missed it, let me be the first to say that fall is officially here. And of course, fall is the time when people are often in the woods looking at the beautiful leaves that New England is well known for this time of year. But of course, hiking in the woods can also be dangerous this time of year, with it also being hunting season. So that's why I've invited former Hopkinton Fire Chief Ken Clark, aka my father, on today to talk about fall safety. But before we get to that, let me just say that later in the show we'll also be talking with some of my close friends, members of my weekly gaming group, about how we've been staying connected the last few months, even when we're all still holed up in our homes. Um, but that's later, and this is now. So, welcome, Dad. Welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Matthew. It's good to be on your show.
Yeah, thank you. So, like I said, it's fall. It is hunting season. And you are, of course, a very experienced outdoorsman. Would you say?
Uh, yeah, I'd say it put me in the middle of the pack of most people. You know what I mean? There's some that spend a lot more time out. Uh, Recently, my days in the woods have been limited due to job and life restrictions, but it's just good to kind of go into the woods like I did like a week ago on a Sunday and just smell the woods. It's like good to be
Mm-hmm.
home in them, and it's like some areas I haven't been in a couple of years. I walked through, and it was really nice to see how some of the change, and it's a natural change. One of the areas where beavers had been, and now they're gone, so it's kind of rebuilding that little piece of land. It's probably 6 or 8 acres there, and it's like interesting to see the change.
Oh, that's in town. Where's that?
Uh, Street on the left. It's
Oh, that's
right
really
along
cool.
the, actually, it's right along the edge of the stream, Indian Brook, that comes out of Golden Pond there, by the Golden Pond, that little
Mm-hmm.
pond there, Indian Brook, Wood Street, and then makes its way down into the swamp and finally, eventually into the reservoir on Cedar Street. And it's like really nice country down in there. I know some of the other people that hunt in there, and I think I've been going in there since I was probably 10 or 12 years old. We used to play in there as kids a lot when having a cousin live on Mount Auburn Street right by the cemetery. It was a quick 10-minute walk and you were into the swamp. So it was like really a good place to grow up, to enjoy. Fish down in there. There was, at that time, I don't know if they're still there, but we'd occasionally get some native brook trout out of Indian Brook where it crossed the telephone line. And it was never a dull moment when you were in there.
That's awesome. So, you mentioned that you've been going into the woods since you were 10. But you're also a hunter,
I'm
correct?
very proud to be a hunter. Been a big part of my life and some of the close people in my life. This To me, there's nothing more. One of the most enjoyable things in life is to share a hunting camp with guys, and you go out and hunt hard all day, and have a really close kinship. And Billy and Mike Gorman, Scott Alexander, some of the people that over the years I've spent a lot of time in the woods with, not only in Hopkinton but in Vermont. So we spent a lot of time bow hunting, uh, rifle hunting in Vermont, shotgun in Mass. We used to even actually, I can remember a couple of times we skipped school during high school and would pack up and head to the western part of the state to deer hunt on a skip school day with 6 or 8 guys. You know what I mean? Couple car worth of guys, and we always had an enjoyable time. And you can tell the people out of someone's sight would be whistling to see where you were in the woods. So it was like always fun. Great people, great memories.
Amazing. How old were you when you first learned to hunt?
Well, hunter safety at 14. So, and it was run over in Westboro at Fish and Game so that you could hunt a year earlier. Usually that if you didn't have a hunter safety class, you had to wait till you were 16. But if you took hunter safety, you could hunt at 15. And my cousin Mike Hayward and I went over to Westboro under the tutelage of a famous game warden, Dick Knight, and got hunter safety. And he was a friend of one of the people that I worked with at the firehouse when I was there, Chester Ranlett, and we became friends for a long time. I saw him long after he retired as a game warden, and a lot of those guys are all older. A lot of them are even passed on now, but great memories.
That's amazing. So like you were in high school then when you started hunting, right?
Yep, and it was
15,
funny.
16?
Yep, so it was 15, and before I could even drive, my mother would make me a lunch, and in the morning she would drive me up to Sal Hill Road in the area of the country club, the old country club, not the new one. And before there was any houses between there and Cedar Street, and I used to take the day and hunt with a borrowed shotgun from my grandfather because I couldn't afford to buy one yet, and would hunt down. And after dark at night, she'd pick me up on Cedar Street at the state park headquarters. She'd be waiting there in the car when I walked out of the woods there sometime after dark. So it was like a great way through there. There wasn't many deer back in those days, but it was just fun to be in the woods.
Really?
Yep. Not like you see now. There's so many more deer now, but you'd hunt hard. If you saw a deer someday in those days, and which is in again the early 70s, it was a good day to see some deer. Some days you didn't see any at all. So it was like, but now it's like going on a tree stand now and 13 will come by. You know what I mean? So it's like the times have changed.
You know, I actually never knew that. That's like I saw deer last night on my way home.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that they were less common back then. Why do you think that would be?
I think they're rebounding from the heavy hunting they sustained in the at some time when they most of the woods were gone and it was farming community at the time. When you go through the woods and see all the stone walls, so I think it was open, and they're edge animals. They need the thickets and the open to get by, and so I think there was a lot less, and they were maybe at some point not overhunted, but not as many because of a lot more people relied on deer for their everyday food at some point. So they got scarce, and then they rebounded. And it's the same story with turkeys. They brought turkeys in from another state, stocked them, and now they're flourishing everywhere that we go. We see turkeys, and they were never in the woods when I was growing up. And they get pictures of, I think I shared with you the other day, we got a picture of a game camera of a really large bobcat right in the swamp behind St. John Cemetery. You know what I mean? Taken by
I can actually
taken by one of my brothers on his trail camera.
Yeah, I actually have that picture ready because I wanted to talk about that. But since you brought it up, we can just take a look at that right now. So this is the picture. This was, where did you say this was taken?
Behind St. John Cemetery. You figure that maybe as a crow flies a quarter mile from the very center of town at Main and Cedar, and there's a bobcat for you. That's a nice bobcat.
And maybe people aren't really seeing it right away, but allow me to zoom in. The cat is just over here.
Yep.
So and I remember you showed me this because this picture from the distance is that it doesn't quite look like a bobcat.
Yeah, the tail does, but the rest of the body doesn't. It almost looks like it's we had some discussion, you and I, about and your Uncle Scott about because the way the ear is, it's not really sharp pointed like most bobcats. It's a little bit rounded. In the way the tail looks, it's hard to see. It's not a really sharp image picture. It's a nice picture, but not real sharp. And we didn't have anything to judge the size on. But those rocks were measured out that from front to back on the legs there is just over 2 feet long. So it's like a bobcat.
Yeah, because obviously, for people who don't know, if you got a good look at the two animals, you would never really confuse an adult bobcat and an adult mountain lion or cougar or puma, whatever you call them, all the same animal. Because cougars are just that much larger. And one of the things that made that made us question its actual identity is the fact that cougars have a much more solid color to their brown fur. They have like a white underbelly, but other than that, they're not patterned like bobcats are. And that one doesn't seem to have the distinctive bobcat patterning.
Yep. No, I agree. Yeah, we had some thinking, but the tail kind of makes it. You know what I mean? Maybe it
Yeah,
was-
bobcats have
yeah.
the
If it had a long
stubby
tail
tail.
sticking out the back, I would think different. But it's like that's a really nice bobcat. And I've only in all my time in the woods, I've only seen one of them in the woods. So it's like they're hard to see. They're so sharp and they have such high skill.
Yeah, I don't think I have seen one around here ever. You know, it's actually interesting. There was a video that I saw on the internet earlier of a mountain. It was a guy who was hiking, and he was being quote unquote stalked by a mountain lion. But obviously, if you're being stalked by a mountain lion, you're not going to see the mountain lion. This was clearly a mountain lion that was being defensive, probably trying to get the guy away from a litter of cubs.
Could have been, yeah. Or
Yeah, but
kill.
it's a
Might have had a kill there. You know, what I mean, someplace that was cached. They cached.
mm-hmm.
They'll kill a deer or something and cache it, cover it with sticks and cache it, and it's like,
Yep.
Interesting animal.
One of the other defining signs of a cougar in the area, because cougars aren't in this area anymore. They used to be, but they were exterminated by hunters a long time ago. And the eastern cougar was declared extinct, I believe, in 2011. And there have been some reports of large cats in the area. There's the reason this means so much to me is back in college. I went to college in Massachusetts College of Liberal Arts in North Adams, in the corner of the state, near Mount Greylock. And I had a professor who was adamant that there was a cougar in the area. So there had been reports of it, and he just firmly believed that there was. But he said that it had a short tail, like something was wrong with the animal and had a short tail.
Yeah.
It's possible. It could have been. But what I don't think people realize is that the area around Mount Greylock, even if it is the highest point in Massachusetts, that's all an urban area. Or not urban, but suburban area. It's very developed. So it's unlikely that such a large cat that needs so much territory to live in would be unconfirmed in an area like that. And so that was my first thought. I thought of that exactly when you showed me that picture. I was like, that does look like a cougar, but we're in central Massachusetts. It was just incredibly unlikely that it was a mountain lion. But if it was, oh boy, that would be incredible.
Yeah, well, in places like that, if there's two large Greenlands either side, you could get one wandering, a young male or female wandering to establish its own territory, coming into a spot where it could be seen to get to another spot that's fairly rural and no one's going to bother it. So they could be anywhere, and it's like, but that we still get the occasional bear sighting in town. You know what I mean? I don't think I've had one this year, but all those things that we never saw, moose, we've had moose in town, and it's really interesting to see how even with all the construction and growth, the wildlife is adjusting, seems to be anyways, adjusting to the growth.
That's excellent. That's good to hear. So moving right along, one of the things I mentioned is that with it being hunting season, it can be dangerous to be out in the woods for people who are not hunters. But Hopkinton has a lot of trails that people enjoy hunting. Do you have any tips as a public safety worker for people who still want to be out around this time of year?
I wouldn't say so much the bow season is danger, but the firearm season may be. And my recommendation, if I was walking in the woods during firearm season, is to wear orange, either a vest and or a hat, or at a minimum a hat, so there's real clear visibility. And I know most of the people that hunt in Hopkinton I know are very, very careful hunters. They're there to hunt, not to just get a shot at something. So it's very, very unlikely I've never heard anybody around here have a close call. I've heard of some local people up country having some close calls, but it's like, yeah, just always got to keep your head up in the woods. You're not out in the street just walking down the sidewalk. You got to be heads up. There's hazards in the woods sometimes, and you just got to know what they are, accept them, and enjoy the time.
So I shouldn't be wearing my signature deer antler hat in the woods, is what you're
No,
saying?
probably not. Well, I might let you do it during the hunting season sometime, but I wouldn't recommend anybody else.
Yeah, no, that's different. And also the other tip I know is to avoid the time when hunters are most active in the early morning and the evening.
Yep. Yep.
Cool. So I don't know, Dad. Do you have any like memorable stories from your time in the woods?
I can remember one time being in a tree stand in the swamp and down Indian Brook came a pair of otters and didn't know I was there. Being there and watching wild mink on the bank of the stream right behind my stand. There's a lot of really good stuff is up and down that whole ridge. You know what I mean? That's a really interesting piece of woods from the cemetery down into the swamp. Then you start climbing up onto Saddle Hill and go all the way to Cedar Street Extension. There's some really nice woods in there, interrupted by houses now in spots, but still a lot of good open space in there. And it was always so enjoyable to be up in there.
Oh, Dad, we actually got a question from a viewer. Someone wants to know what kind of safety recommendations would you give for people's pets?
Yeah, I've seen like a lot of people walk with dogs, which I think is fantastic, but a little orange on them too, so that they aren't mistaken for game, and they shouldn't be mistaken for game, because if someone's a hunter and not just a shooter, they know what they're aiming at, they know what they're pointing their bow at, and they should never be pointing something at a dog, you know what I mean, or some type of a pet, So I've never, of all my hours and hours in the woods, I've never done that. You hear something sometimes and you say, oh, that's a dog, or you know what I mean, some coyotes will run by or something, you know what I mean. So it's like that's not a deer, so you don't even move, you just watch it. And it's like it's actually fun to watch something when they don't know that you're there. You get the wind with you and they can't smell you, and they're just doing their thing in the woods, and they don't have a clue that you're watching them. It's kind of sharp, actually.
That's awesome. So one of the most important things you're saying is for hunters, at least, is hunters and people with guns in the woods should know what they're doing. They should be taking safety courses.
I think it's a minimum requirement now to do it. To be a hunter now, you have to have hunter safety. Again, mine was when I was 14. So it was 50 years ago that I took it. So, but the lessons are still the same to this day, You gotta have safety in the woods, like with tree stand safety and things like that. So there's a lot of people that are injured in falls from them, but you just gotta be safe. Have your straps on.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
We got another question in. Someone wants to know, why should I be cautious walking in my yard? I just want, before you take this, Dad, I just want to say, I don't think you should have to be. Me and my dad have been talking more about, if you're hiking in public places, but do you have anything to say about this?
Oh, I think that I think it's a minimum of 500 feet. You can't discharge from a front, or let an arrow go, or discharge a firearm from a dwelling. So most people should be very safe in their yard. And it's like, it's a sharing of the woods. The resources that we have don't belong to any one group. So it's the people who are walking their dog or just walking by themselves, and the people who are hunting all need to share the common resource. So it's like that. Some people don't like hunting, some people do. You need to just be respectful about each other's views, and be careful about when you have a deer, how you present it to people. And it's like, no showing off, like riding around with it on your hood of your truck like they just used to do 30, 40 years ago. And it was a big deal, because no one would get any. Just be very respectful and honorable of if you have the great luck and the skill to take one. And it's like, and then you use it. Like, as you know, in our family, when I got deer, we would make sausage, venison sausage, or venison
Mhm.
meatballs mom would make. And it was very enjoyable to know that we use the product that we got. You know what I mean? We use that animal, and some people don't like it. And it's like, yeah, I can feel for that. And, but we utilize the resource to the best of our ability.
Yeah, and I just want to say for anyone watching, obviously we're talking about legal hunting here. I am an animal lover. My father is an animal lover. We are in no way condoning anything resembling poaching. You know,
Oh, disgusting.
absolutely.
Yep. No.
Um, and like you said, you know, everyone has different views on this. I am not a hunter. I don't think I could. The only shot I would ever take at an animal is with a camera.
To each his own.
Yeah, you know. But I just got another question. You mentioned that you would take deer and that we've eaten it. I remember like tons of times that we've had venison for dinner. Do you ever hunt for trophies?
Nope.
Obviously, I know this answer.
No.
But...
No. But like, no, not a trophy hunter. Just like harvest a deer occasionally, and a lot of times, oh, I don't like that one today, and let one walk by where you could take one, even when you had a dope permit in your pocket. You would, oh, nope, got a couple of yearlings for that. Nope, not going to use it, and let them go. You know what I mean? It's not, I was never in it for the killing. I was in for the hunting aspect of it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's like, it's a challenging question. Some people are very anti, and some people are very pro. And I'm kind of like in the middle there. You know what I mean? I think you should give everyone's due their what they think is the right thing for themselves. And it's like it's a available resource and a lawful taking of game. And it's like so again, I don't do as much now as I used to when I was younger, but it's like it's still fun to get in the woods whenever I can.
Yeah, you just like to see them.
Yep. And we go around in the evening in the Jeep and count them and say, yeah, we saw 8 tonight, we saw 9 tonight, didn't see any tonight. It's just like hunting. Some days you see them and some days you don't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of my friends, he lives right on the end of the Audubon area. That's, I believe it's around Lake Wasika, right on the border of Ashland. And when I used to go to his house, there are deer all the time.
Yep.
One of the animals I saw several times over the years was a specific individual. The deer had a bad back leg, and I remember asking my friend, like, "Oh, hey, like, is that deer doesn't look okay?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, we've seen that one for years."
Yeah, they're very adaptable, very hardy souls, and very adaptable to might have had a run in with a car or something, or get injured in the woods somehow, and they're very, very adaptable.
Mm-hmm. Another question that just came in, Dad, when you bag a deer, where do you take them to check in?
Well, there's a bunch of places you can go. I think locally, I've gone. I don't know if they still do an Upton at Fin and Feather. I haven't got one probably like 4 or 5 years. I haven't been out much since, work's been busy and other things. So in the last 4 or 5 years, but I think they used to do it at Arena Slaughterhouse down on Ash Street. They'd check deer there. And if you needed to, you could leave it and have them butcher it up for you. So it's so there's places around that you can do that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any tips for anyone who would be interested in getting into hunting?
I would say that it's good to have an adult mentor to do that. It's hard if you're 14 to 15 years old and not have anybody to do it with, if you're by yourself. I just ran into a girl today in Berlin that we were on an incident response and chatting with this girl, and she just was part of the, I think she said 8th grade, but she was part of the recent youth hunt where they open up the season early for youth beginner hunters. And they can use a shotgun at the beginning of the season rather than later in the season, like the Monday after Thanksgiving. Now it's all bow hunting. And they open up a special season for young kids who are just starting at certain ages that they can hunt and choose a 20 gauge shotgun. So it's like she shot at a deer and missed it. So it's like she was like pretty proud of that. And it was fun to see that enthusiasm when she was telling me the story. So it was like, I was impressed. You know what I mean? It's still out there and people are still interested in. I think the number of hunters is gradually dropping off as some of our older citizens pass on, and it's not something a lot of people do now. But we started out with a bunch of my friends at an early age, and it's like, and went all the time before, and life kind of catches up with you, and you got to have responsibilities where you don't have the time to put into it. So it's like, nope, with like I said before, with the Gormans, and I think by the fall, I graduated high school in 1974, and by that fall, we were going to Vermont for bow and rifle and all those weekends and having a great time with all those great people. And Billy and Mike Gorman's dad, the governor, and it's Bill Gorman, and it's like, and we just had a fantastic camp that we went to, and the place where we stayed was just really nice, and the people were good, cooked good meals, and we just enjoyed, you know what I mean? And
Yeah, no, I was actually thinking that, like, I don't know anyone my age who is interested in hunting. There was a time when I wanted to get into it, but I'm not. I'm only 26, but I definitely personally feel like the older I get, the less I like the idea
yeah,
of killing animals, even for food. But like I do eat. I'm not even a vegetarian. I do like meat, so I can't say too much. I had another point I was going to make up to that, but I'll get into the next question because we only have a few more minutes left. But do sportsman clubs like the Rod and Gun Club in Woodville, do they teach people how to hunt anymore or at all?
I don't know if they have classes on how to hunt, but what you do is you learn how to shoot. That's a good place to learn how to shoot. And when you learn how to shoot, there's obviously, if it's a rod and gun club like that, there's a lot of avid hunters there. And you kind of like strike up a friendship with somebody and say, hey, I've never hunted before. Will you take me hunting? And I can't believe that anyone there that I know of all the people that go there that are avid hunters would say no. And it's like, got to make sure that you're with the right person that teaches you the right way to hunt, that they don't take advantage of shortcomings, and teach you the love of the hunt and to respect if you have to, like when you do complete the hunt and get an animal, it's great respect that's shown the animal. So it's like, nope, it's like that would be a good place to start. Get in there and learn how to shoot there, and then strike up some friendships. And I'm sure someone eventually would say, when you said, oh, I've never hunted before, I wonder what it's like, and someone wouldn't jump all over that there. I'd be very surprised.
And I think we have time for one more question. If you ever actually retire, Dad, do you think you'll want to do some more hunting?
Yep. But just, I like local. One time I got to go, years ago, I went to Montana out of Augusta to the Scapegoat Wilderness area to hunt elk, and I didn't get an elk, but I went with a really good Hopkinton crew of a lot of the old timers now are gone, Bud Freeze and, oh, I can't even think of all their names now, but all those guys like that. And it's like, and we went on a horseback ride in and stayed at this camp, and horseback ride out every morning to hunt, and stayed out all day. And it's like, and when I hunt, I like to go in the woods in the morning, especially when I'm up country or a place like that, and hunt all day and then come back at night. I don't like to go back in, and we don't have to warm up, just stay out, eat your lunch and keep going. So it's like, that was like, that was a great, great time. We flew out there all together and went, Bobby Pratt was there and all those old timers. And it's like, I'm trying to think of Mr. Wright from the lumber store that used to be there. I'm just drawing a blank on his name. I can see his face and smile when I think of him, you know what I mean? And it's like, Al Wright, just a great guy. And all those people went to Montana, and we just had a fantastic time. Mark McBride, went, yep, good crew. So
That's awesome, Dad. Well, we are out of time for this segment. I want to thank you, Dad, so much for coming up and sharing these stories. I think this was a great talk. And I hope we taught people a little something about, outdoor safety in the fall.
okay, thank you, Matthew. Take care.
Yeah, no problem. So that's it for that half. Coming up next, we have a couple of my good friends, members of the Water Gang, as we are called, a name given to us by one of the waitresses at Harry's restaurant in Westboro, where before this whole mess, we used to go there every Wednesday. And the waitresses know us. Many of us have signature orders that they don't even have to ask us about. But obviously, we're not going to restaurants anymore. We haven't for many months, but we're still trying to stay together as best as we can. And that's why on Wednesday nights, we get together over the internet and we play games. So I'd like to welcome two of my friends who have been on the show before, Alex Kershey and Sam Churko. Thank you guys so much for coming.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going? Thank you for having us.
Yes,
Yeah, no
yes,
problem.
It's good to see you. Hey,
Yeah,
Mr.
it's
Clark.
good. Yeah, it's good to see you guys as well. So, yeah, so we've been, playing games for 6, 7. Oh God, 7 months now. No,
Yeah,
not quite,
been a
because we
while.
didn't start right
It'll
away.
be- it was in April, early April. So that's 6 months ago, and then it's gonna be 7 months very soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was hoping to have a few more members of the gang on tonight, but everyone's busy. Times are still crazy. We have friends in
Yeah.
grad school, so.
True.
But yeah, no, I'm glad I at least got a few of us on. Maybe we'll have a full group show at another time.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
So, do one of you just want to give like a brief rundown of what we do every week?
You can take this one if you want, Sam.
Sure. And chime in whenever. So twice weekly, Wednesday nights, and then later on in the week, the 7 of us, we get together and we play a variety of different role-playing games or RPGs. And it's something that we honestly didn't get to do even before we were in quarantine because we
Yeah.
didn't always see each other all that often. And while scheduling it is different, it's something that we're not necessarily used to. Being able to see one another guaranteed twice a week has been it's been really comforting over the last 6 months.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, I've been very thankful for it.
No, because you're right. Like, this isn't, even when we were seeing each other more often, if we got together for games, we were normally getting together for Dungeons and Dragons.
Mhm.
And I don't. No, we have played Dungeons and Dragons while doing this, but only like once or twice actually.
A few times.
But we haven't been playing Dungeons and Dragons because we have a whole list of games that we want to try, and that's what we've been using this opportunity for. So, Alex, do you want to talk a bit about that process? Because most of the games are yours.
I mean, a lot of them, yeah. So the thing is that a lot of people, so there's something called in Dungeons and Dragons, it's dungeon mastering, but otherwise it's the more general term is GMing, which is game mastering. Some games have very specific terms for things like that, but essentially one player, most often in RPGs, in role-playing games, although there are exceptions to this, kind of sets the stage of the world and the characters, etc., other than the people that are played by the party, the player characters. The rest of the world, what's going on in it, characters there, etc., are usually run by the GM or game master.
Mm-hmm.
I personally have a broad tendency towards enjoying GMing, and because of that, when we decided that we were going to try and do this, there was a presentation of a lot of there's basically, we said, like, all right, so who wants to run games if we do this? Because the realization was that there could be a kind of there could be a pattern whereby we establish, hey, we know that we're whoever's going to be around on Wednesday or whatever other day, whoever's going to be around that day, let's make that like based on who is there, what games do people want to play, what games people want to run. So we made a Google Doc. We talked about a lot of different RPGs that we wanted to run, and we said essentially, like, this will be the week for this, or this will be the week for that, what, et cetera, et cetera. So what's fun about that is it means that we all get a chance to sort of have days where we are doing more of the work from a prep perspective, and other days where we're able to show up with pre-made characters. It's, well, not pre-made, characters we made on an advanced day, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of there's a lot of variety in the types of games people are interested in, and therefore a lot of variety in the types of games we've gotten a chance to play. I tend to like very mechanically deep. There's a term that is used that is called crunchy. I tend to like very crunchy games. I tend to like games where a lot of the work is done in character creation, so that then it is essentially, on some level, a simulation of your characters in a world. Like, you are making all of your choices based on the tool set available to you. And that's one of the joys of RPGs, is that essentially you have a box of tools as individual characters that you are able to reach into and use. And that those tools are based on in-universe restrictions. So, like, if you're playing a Dungeons & Dragons, maybe you're all adventurers, but one of you is like a fighter and uses a magical sword, and one of you is a wizard and throws fireballs at people by pinching small amounts of bat guano and exploding them, because never forget that's required to use fireball. It's a material component.
It's supposed to be.
But then there's another game that we're going to be playing soon called Lancer, where we have mechs, and it's a mech game. And I don't know, it's interesting because you get to see you get to try. One of the things that's nice about this is we get to, in a relatively low stakes, low commitment atmosphere among our friends, try games that we've wanted to try. And then if people don't necessarily love them, or if it's not like the thing that we want to do next week, we can shift away from doing that and trying some other games somebody else is excited about, which also allows us to make space for the different broad tendencies of and preferences of people in various towards various games, et cetera, et cetera.
And not only do we get to play all those different games, those variety of games, Dungeons and Dragons in a fantasy realm, or Lancer, mechs in space, but my favorite part is we get to play different characters. So every 2 or 3 weeks, we get to just roll up a new character. So if we didn't really care for the character we made for the last game, that's okay. We can say goodbye to them. And if we did, we got.
Yep.
And that's always one of my favorite things, is making cool and often wacky characters to populate the world. So.
No, never wacky.
No, never wacky.
No, never wacky.
We've never made a wacky character. None of us have ever made a wacky character.
We're all very serious, grim, dark role players.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's absolutely all of us in the
For
group.
sure.
Always. We totally didn't spend 3 weeks playing a Power Rangers RPG.
No. And I definitely don't recall that one campaign where my character was turned into a Tyrannosaurus Rex at least once a month, just for fun.
And then we made you fly.
And what's important about this, by the way, and this is I think a definingly important. Of those things were specifically mechanized things. It's not like, oh, what is the funny thing to do next is turn somebody into it's not a strict storytelling activity. It's a storytelling activity with rules, and those rules therefore breed creativity inside of what the systems established by them are. Which I'm not saying there's no RPGs that work on there's no rules system. It's just that
everybody is John.
It's not what we're here for. Yeah, Everyone is John is a game that definitely works on a rules lighter scenario.
I thought about that game every day this week, and I don't know why, but I think
it's weird.
To play it soon.
I also thought about it this week. Definitely not every day this week. I'm not even going to pretend I did. I'm not even going to pretend I thought about it every day.
I'll call you every day for the remainder of the week, reminding you that this game exists. Yeah.
I have not thought about that game recently, but I really enjoy that game. And I like that game because if we're just like the way we used to play it, if we were just sitting around and we had nothing else to do, one of us would be like, I want to play Everyone is John, and you can roll up a character in 5 minutes. You just need 2 6-sided die, the standard die. If you have dice, you probably have 6-sided dice at home. And you just determine like 2 things, maybe 3 things that your character is good at. You have 10 tokens, and you just bid for control of one guy, and you try to accomplish a goal. That's all it is. If you want to know more about it, because I'm not gonna explain to you the one layer of depth that is in the rules of that game.
Like
Just
the
because
2 pages.
yeah, we only have so much.
John gets very easily distracted. That's the rules.
Yeah,
Are we eight?
it's what?
Never mind. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, no, look it up. Everyone is John is the name of the game. It's a really simple game. Just play with your friends or your
And it's
family.
free to read, right?
Yeah.
I
It's
think
just
so. I
like
think
open
someone just made
access,
it up.
yeah, open source.
But
We could even
yeah,
play it on here, maybe, probably not.
We're not going to, but we could.
No.
that would be an interesting thing. But let's table that.
Not
for,
right this minute.
I'm gonna think about that because I like that idea. I'm gonna
We'll put
table
it on
that
the
for
back
another
burner.
show, maybe. But that kind of leads into my favorite thing about RPGs. Because I've talked a lot about this stuff. I had a show about Dungeons and Dragons a few months ago. My favorite thing about playing these games is telling a story. Like I'm a fan of like action movies and superheroes and like animated shows. And I think the biggest common thread between all those things are like just like dynamic action. So like being able to picture these characters in my head doing these events, like and just having these stories, like it just makes me want to tell other people like, oh, this is a great thing that happened, like as if it was like, oh, this is a show I watched this was like the new episode of my favorite show.
Yeah.
But no, this is just something me and my friends came up with at a table. And it just
Totally.
You brought up the time we turned you into a T-Rex and made you fly because we were escaping a pyramid. Like that's something none of us planned for. It was just we were overcome with enemies. Our wizard was able to turn you into a T-Rex, which is something we were just able to do. That's in the rules. And then my character was able to make you fly.
Yeah.
and that just became one of our go. I think we used it like 2 other times the rest of that campaign. My favorite, the way I picture it always is like there was a villain who was like, "You'll never escape my castle," and I just imagine the whole party of characters just grinning, except for my character, who was definitely the straight man of the group, who just like in the background. It then cuts to a zoom out of the castle,
A shot of the pyramid.
yeah,
or the
and then
castle or
everyone
whatever.
just crashes through on a flying T-Rex. I live for that. It's so funny
good.
and it's so good. That's why I play RPGs.
And I like that before all of this, sometimes we would play different games, like back when we were at college, especially, and we would all come back together and we would trade those stories, like the really funny or really cool things that we found in these different role-playing games. And it really is just a way of sharing these really cool collective creative narratives.
Yeah, and what's nice is, by the way, we've talked a lot about fantastical narratives, both fantasy and science fiction. There's tons of RPGs that are much more like you can find an RPG that represents your area of specialist interest, even if it is still something like that. There's plenty of superhero RPGs. I'm a big fan of a couple of those. There's a pro wrestling RPG I'm a big fan of. But there's also like RPGs where you play as yourself, and Wild West games where it's in the historical American Wild West. There's so many different ways to essentially. Also, all of these games are mechanically different. They all riff on the concepts that we're trying to establish here as like the core tenets of RPG playing. They all do it in different ways. It's very interesting.
I think the dream of us hosting a show like this is that someone like a typical HCAM viewer might see us talking about this, and maybe when they start, they'd be like, "Oh, okay, yeah, these nerds are just at it again."
They're back.
But maybe they'll see us just be this excited because this is something we all love, and maybe they'll be like, "You know what? That sounds kind of interesting. Maybe I should do that with my friends or family." That it would be my dream, is to just get someone to try this, because it's a game. It's just a fun activity. Like you can take it as seriously or as not seriously as you like. There are rules, but one of my favorite things about Dungeons and Dragons is that the rule book says there are no official rules, only official suggestions. Yeah. You can take what you want from the games and just kind of, do what works for you and your party. Like that's the fun of it.
Yeah.
Like we don't play Dungeons and Dragons specifically by the rules.
Yeah,
we don't
I mean,
follow.
We play it mostly by the rules, but
Yeah.
Mostly by the rules, but I mean, depending on who the DM is, everyone
has different rules they care
things
about.
change. Yeah.
I mean, there's
And I
even
remember-
official variants of rules, like
Yeah.
official don't use this if you want, but use this instead. There's tons of stuff
Mhm.
like that.
I remember very vividly the first time I played Dungeons and Dragons. Alex, you were the dungeon master for the first game that I ever played.
Mine too. Different
And-
game, but mine too.
Mhm.
Were you both
Back
elf
in the-
druids? Because for some reason, I think you
Oh,
may
yeah.
have both been for the same for the same thing that. For some reason, most people that I have taught to play Dungeons and Dragons 3.5, which is an edition of Dungeons and Dragons, their first character has been an elf druid, like 7 out of 10 cases, maybe 8 out of 10 cases.
My first character was a human rogue.
All right.
I think that's pretty on brand for both of us.
Whereas I have played
Mhm.
that game since 2006 or 7, which is not like an enormously long time, but is a reasonably long time. And I did not make a rogue character in any edition of Dungeons and Dragons until 2020.
Mine was 2019, so I held out a little less long than you did.
Yeah.
But Rogue was the last character I tried.
It's like, I don't
Partially-
even have a problem with it. It's just, what were you going to say?
No.
I mean, yeah,
Partially
it's definitely
because-
this.
Yeah.
It's definitely an aesthetic thing for me. Like nowadays, that character was like I'm an assassin, but I'm a noble assassin with a code, and like that used to be my favorite kind of character, and I would never play something like that just because I've kind of outgrown that fantasy. But I still tend to play rogues a lot.
And that's part of the thing is Matt is usually the rogue when we play, or a rogue archetypical character.
Yeah,
So I usually choose different things. But
yeah,
What's
you know
interesting,
that's
I
fair.
think, though, too. What's interesting, I think, though, is that RPGs
But
also,
I'm
I think,
happy for it.
reflect different aspects of the personal self or the power fantasy that the power fantasies we seek to live in
Mhm.
than other types of games do. So, like, when I play like video games like Diablo or World of Warcraft or something, I have a much larger tendency towards characters that are sort of, more in your face, simple, low to the ground, like I've got a sword and I swing a sword at people type characters. Whereas in RPGs, I think because they're more representative of choices you would make in a space as characters, like a simulation of life rather than a specifically mechanical representation of an alternate aspect of it. I have a broad tendency towards like wizards and kooky old men and people who access profound magic and deep power. I don't know. There's something about like that as a representation of the self that is more clear in that context. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I guess if we take a look at the characters I've built most recently, I'm sorry, I'm just thinking this, saying this as I'm thinking it aloud. I tend to build protector types and definitely more support-based characters like healing and defense. But I mean, explicitly my Lancer character. And yeah, I tend to build more supportive, more assistance-based characters.
Yeah, and meanwhile, I think the biggest common thread in my characters is that they tend to have big personalities. They tend to be very charismatic or likable to some degree, or at the very least, like I said, just big personalities. Like, I had a character who was an absolute cartoon in her shenanigans, but she was just fun to play because whenever I'm playing D&D, there's always these intrusive thoughts that come into my head, like, "Ooh, say this bad joke or this wacky thing that doesn't actually apply." And of course, you never can because it's like, "Oh, I'm a serious paladin, and so my character has to be serious." No, with her, I could just say those intrusive thoughts, and it was great.
That was the character. That was the
Yeah.
bit.
Those are my favorite characters to play.
That is a good point. All of my characters have a bit, like one really specific bit.
I wasn't going to say anything, but yes.
I was thinking more archetypically, but then thinking to all my characters, yeah, each of them have one insane tick about them.
I think my favorite was when we were playing a game called The Sprawl, which was a cyberpunk game where we're playing as like I don't know, what's the word for it, Alex? What would you?
Shadowrunners. I mean,
Yeah, I guess.
Of corporate
wet workers.
espionage?
Wet workers. People responsible for corporate wet work.
Yeah, in a cyberpunk. If you don't know what cyberpunk is, Blade Runner is probably your best go-to for most
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
But
Wetwork, not exclusively, exclusively murder or assassination, by the way. Like also
yeah, good point.
corporate espionage, theft of secrets is corporate espionage, subterfuge, the liberation of assets, things that a corporation would explicitly disavow people who do, but would hire people to do in a universe where giant corporations
Control everything.
in a different universe where giant corporations control everything. Not to get overtly political.
Larger corporations.
But what my favorite thing about that character, Sam, was that one of the aspects was we had to establish that our characters knew each other and had worked with each other privately.
Oh boy.
And you just didn't.
No.
You were just like, no, she was contacted to do those jobs. She didn't show up.
She did exactly
she said she would show up.
She did exactly one job, and it was with my character.
Yeah,
because my character was capable of finding people that needed mechanical arms, but we'll leave the rest to your imagination.
We should get back to that game.
I want to get back to that game. I like that game. I like Cyberpunk. But yeah, that's the fun of it. It's being able to do something wacky like that, and then the next day maybe play it much more serious if you want to. You don't have to do anything if you don't. You don't even have to play these games if you don't want to. But in fact, I'm sure. What?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm sure most people probably won't try these games, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's like I said with my dad. Different things for everyone, different strokes for different blokes. But I hope we can.
Many. Sorry. Sorry.
I hope we could inspire someone to play one of these. Go ahead.
That'd be awesome. And if you do, and you need someone to inspire you or give you ideas, I mean, I don't want to speak for all of us, but I mean, we've been doing this for a while. So, but there are so many people that I know who don't play RPGs, but they listen to RPGs. So there are tons of podcasts and YouTube shows and YouTube channels that just play Dungeons and Dragons or play RPGs, and people listen to them because they're narratives, they're stories that people are telling. Yeah, they're making them up kind of on the spot and reacting to things in real time, but they're still stories that are being told and that people enjoy. So even if you don't feel like you're a kind of person who would play one of these, you can still engage in this media if you choose by listening.
It's just storytelling. We actually just got a question. How does someone get started in playing a game like this if they're interested? Which is a good question that I didn't think to ask. Go ahead.
There are some games that I think are actually first of all, it is actually very easy, even in times like this, if you have, if you know where to look for, sort of looking for group type communities. There are subreddits and forums and things for people who want to
Discord.
Get together.
And
groups. Discord, which is an app for your computer or phone,
what we use,
where people find groups to look for to play games with them. There's also websites like Roll20, things like that, I think, have looking for group type functions. I'm not completely sure, but the forums of those places might. But in terms of very low to the ground, there's actually a lot of RPGs that are relatively easy to learn, or RPGs that require only one person or two people to know how to play, and then you can sort of teach the rest of the group pretty easily. I mean, frankly, the very easiest way to learn how to play an RPG is to find somebody who knows how to play it and ask them, how do you play this game? To ask them to sort of, hey, are you interested in playing this at some point soon? And there's like walkthroughs and things for stuff like that. But now there's YouTube videos for things like this. There are podcasts. I'm sure if you Google how to play Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition or something, you'll be able to find things like that. But also, like, there's tons of one-page RPGs that you can find on websites like Drive-Thru RPG, a favorite of mine. I'm not sponsored by them, but I wish I was. And there's tons and tons of free and simple RPGs there, or on websites like itch.io. I would say primarily what you want, the first and foremost thing is either find a way to group up with people who are also interested in playing games, or if you have a group of friends who might be interested in doing something like this, broach the topic with them. If it's something that none of you have tried before, it's often extremely rewarding. I really love it. It's one of my favorite things to do. And I think that even if it's hard to pitch that first time, I think people very rarely regret giving it a shot. And I think that if you can find a group, if you can find a game, That's good. And there's tons of different simple RPGs to play for first timers or to dip your toe in things. Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition is relatively easy. You can find most of its rules free and legally available online through like the D&D 5th edition SRD, which is a standard reference document. It's because it's via something called the Open Gaming License, which don't worry too much about, but it means that Wizards of the Coast, which creates Dungeons and Dragons and other games like Magic the Gathering, well, didn't create Dungeons and Dragons, but that
Makes
currently
it,
owns
yeah.
Dungeons and Dragons and makes it. They have information like that available online. If you want to play games like there's various other games where that is true of too. It's easy to find ways to find and play different games. So there's documentation for things like that available.
In fact, this actually happened. Something like this happened to me and Sam a few years ago, where we were contacted by people that we were friends with in high school, but we had more or less lost contact with like during college.
Through college, yeah.
Yeah. But they asked us to teach them Dungeons and Dragons, and we still play with them, and they have become our very good friends. Again.
And they know the game just as well as we do at this point.
Well, maybe not just as well as we do, but they know it.
They know workable point.
They've been playing for years now.
Yeah,
they're not newbies.
And that's
the
very
thing.
hard. It is. That's fair. And that's the thing. Role-playing games are a great thing to do with people that you already know, people that you love, and people that you trust. It's really, I think it can be easy to take these sort of role-playing risks with the people you know, but it's also pretty easy for some people, I could imagine, to take these risks with people they might not be as familiar with. Take, for example, the three of us when we went to college. We all got involved in role-playing groups in college. We didn't know them as well as we knew one another, but we bonded through the act of role-playing games with these new friends that we made in college. So whether you have a group of people at home or a group of friends that you want to try these role-playing games with, or you're ready to just give it a shot with people you meet online, it's possible either way.
Yes, and I think that part of it is times like this. It's a very easy activity to play to do with people that you have an established rapport with or a group, or that you can invite into that easily, because with these remote things, Zoom, Discord, Roll20, these are Roll20, a website we mentioned earlier. These are easy ways to sort of coordinate games and be able to see one another and things like that. When the pandemic is over, there are you can go to a lot of the way to find early groups is to go to local game stores and say like, hey, do you, especially ones that have reoccurring events. When I lived in New York, there was a place that I loved in sort of the upper west side of Manhattan called Hex & Co., where they had every Sunday and Saturday they would have like 10 tables set up specifically for groups that came there every week to play games. They paid for the table space, and then some of those games are run by the store. So like if a new version of like Werewolf, which is an RPG, came out, or if people wanted to be able to play Dungeons and Dragons, or people wanted to be able to play Call of Cthulhu, which is a Lovecraftian horror RPG. By the way, as we may or may not have reiterated many times, you can find any genre you want as an RPG. That's like, I think, a very easy way to, if you're comfortable with that type of social situation, start playing a new game. But obviously that just can't apply now. But things like this is a really effective way to do it. I mean, This is kind of like what it's like when we're playing games, except, we're on Zoom here before all of you instead of on Discord before no one except ourselves.
And for anyone else, like, you can always just buy the starter set of for Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. It comes with everything you need to start playing. But unfortunately, guys, we are out of time. I wish we could talk about this for another hour, but we'll have to come back to it at a later date. So thank you both for being on the show. Thank you, everyone, so much for watching. I want to remind everyone that we have plenty of other shows coming up in the week. We have Tom Nappy's News tomorrow at 6:30. And we have Keep Moving with the Senior Center at 10 on Friday. And then we have Dine and Drive-In at 7 on Friday, followed by a weekend of live sports. So with saying that, keep a lookout for all of that. I would like to thank once again everyone for watching, and have a good evening. Goodbye. Bye. Bye.